It's time for the Daily Planet podcast show. So sit back, relax, and give us a go. Scott and Matt and maybe a guest, undertaking an epic pod quest. We're gonna ramble on about movies and books and television and directors and film festivals and this really long list of stuff that I know nothing about, but they gave it to me and they really wanted me to read through it. And that's all I can really say about it, but it's gonna be great. Okay, start the show.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Planet Podcast, your weekly podcast for all things movies, TV, books, and anything else we feel like talking about. I am your host, Scott Daly, and I'm joined this week by my co-host, Supreme Leader, Matt Freeman. Matt, how are you doing this week? It's been a bit since you've been on the podcast.
Yeah, it has. I'm doing very well. You know, I went back and I listened to our Force Awakens podcast in preparation for this. And when I was Supreme Leader Snoke that time, I had my fancy microphone set up, and I answered you in a cool voice. But I don't have that now because of reasons. But yeah, it's been good. I just saw this movie that we are going to talk about like a couple hours ago, so it's pretty fresh.
So it's pretty fresh. This is Hot Take Matt Freeman here.
Yep.
Come to deliver the news.
And I've actually avoided consuming any like criticism or reviews or even after watching it. Normally, after I watch a movie, I pretty quickly go and I look at what the critics are saying, just because that's entertaining to me. That's kind of part of the experience. But before I went to see this movie, I was kind of put out, I guess, by some of the stuff I was seeing on Twitter, where it was almost like we skipped the talking about the movie phase and went straight into the movie as a proxy for the culture war phase. And I was like, okay, I'm pre-tapping out. I just want to watch the movie.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. Yeah, we are here. If anyone didn't know by the title of the podcast, we are here to discuss Star Wars: The Last Jedi, the newest Star Wars film. This is going to be start off with a spoiler-free discussion where we just talk about the movie generally, and then we'll move into spoilers and we will dig into this movie just like we always do. Matt, this is one, like you were hinting towards. Normally, you and I have multiple conversations before we record, so we kind of know each other's opinions going into it. Yeah, you not only did you not check out any criticism, but you and I really didn't talk, except for the one text I sent you after I came out of the movie that said, "I liked it. I think you're going to like it." And that's about all. So this is like, I'm going to be hearing your reaction just with everyone else. It'll be a complete surprise to me. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it may be a surprise to me too, because it's so fresh, and I like the reason I didn't come out of the movie and like want to talk about it is I was like, I want to let some things settle before I verbalize anything. So.
Yeah, which, spoilers for the positive view coming out of my hand, is that this is a Star Wars movie where you need to let things settle when you come out of it, which is a big change in my opinion. But we will get to all of that. First, we are going to do some news.
This is Daily Planet News.
So Matt, it happened. The thing we've been talking about for the last couple months, the thing that they said, no, that's not going to happen. The thing that we were fearing, it happened. Disney has officially bought 21st Century Fox in a $52 billion stock deal. It now, I don't know, they've announced the sale. I don't think the sale has officially gone through yet, but short of government intervention, which in this administration, I doubt that's going to happen. This deal will go through. So Disney now owns 21st Century Fox and all the things that come with that. Would you like to know what all that is? Because it's a lot.
Yes, I would.
All right, it's 20th Century Fox, the film studio, Fox TV, so the Fox channel, National Geographic, FX and all the FX subsidiaries, 60% share of Hulu, and a whole bunch of franchises including Planet of the Apes, Alien, Predator, Avatar, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, actually, The Simpsons, which feels weird, and yes, of course, X-Men and Fantastic Four now return to Disney and Marvel. This is a huge industry-shaking deal that we've been talking about for at least a couple episodes now, and it's gone through. What is your initial reaction to this actually happening, Matt?
Just the general misgivings about monopolies and the sense that this can't really be good for the culture. I'm waving my hands going forward because I mean, it like juxtaposing The Simpsons with Disney, I think is the most illustrative way of framing it, because The Simpsons, for the first however many years you count as being real Simpsons, was like counterculture,
right?
And it could never have been created by Disney. Like, it never would have been created by Disney, right. No matter what, almost. Like, I can't imagine it. And so not only, I mean, obviously The Simpsons is dead and not really The Simpsons anymore. It's the zombie of The Simpsons. But like, once Disney owns, what is it, like 70% of all of entertainment, like media now, practically.
Yeah, it seems like it.
That just makes it really hard to imagine something like, what would The Simpsons be? What if all of The Simpsons creators were offset in time by 30 years or 40 years or whatever it is? I can't do math in my head, but you know, what if they were coming of age today and they were going to make The Simpsons and they went to Fox? Fox is owned by Disney now.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to imagine a lot of the more valuable things in the world, which are usually made by, like, weird things made by fringe people, being made in a paradigm controlled by Disney.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. As much as, like, look, there are good things that are going to come out of this from I'm a fan of Marvel movies perspective. Yay, Marvel movies, yay. Yeah. But I really completely agree that I think the industry culture shakeup that's going to happen is going to affect everything. And not just, oh, cool, I get these movies. Like, Disney's already come out and said that, yes, they're going to, that a rated R Deadpool movie might find home at Disney. That's fine. But we're talking about things well beyond which characters get to appear in movies now. I mean, Disney already has a controlling interest in how they dictate terms to movie theaters. Like we saw this weekend with The Last Jedi, Disney basically said, you have to show our movie a certain number of showings this weekend. And if you don't get our movie. And so theaters are basically forced, like the Alamo Draft House I went to, I think was showing The Last Jedi and The Disaster Artist on like one screen, and everything else was The Last Jedi. And that's not only, yes, you could argue that's a good business decision because they're probably going to sell out most screenings, maybe, but also they don't have a choice. That's what they have to do. And let's remember that the deals that Disney negotiates, the majority of the sales from the tickets, the gross for the opening weekend goes to Disney, goes to the studio. I think it's something like 90% of ticket sales from opening weekend go right to the studio, something ridiculous like that. So you take this and then you give them more power. They have more say over theaters. They have more leverage over the theaters. That's not good. That's not good for the industry. That's too much power in the hands of one company that can dictate and control how the industry is shaped, how it moves forward, how it responds to different things. It makes it so there's less money overall for smaller projects because there's less studios for it. And it's hard not to be sad about this in what it's going to do to the industry. And I love Disney movies. Like, that's the thing. I think Disney makes great movies. We're talking about one today that I quite like, but I think it's bigger than just whether or not you like movies.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's all, like you pointed out, it's also Fox TV, National Geographic, FX, Hulu, which are all, pseudo television.
Right.
And that's, not that Disney hasn't done television before, but those are platforms. And it's very disheartening to imagine a company monopolizing, TV. Like, imagine if TV was a monopoly instead of a number of different competing stations.
Yeah.
It would be a very different world that we live in today.
Right. I mean, Disney owns ESPN, and now I don't think Fox News, or not Fox News, I don't think Fox Sports was part of this, but as part of the deal, Disney gets to advertise ESPN on Fox Sports channels. So it's like, even that is them gripping power over stuff that they didn't even have yet. Like, we could very well see Fox, the TV station, slowly fade away over the course of the next decade or so if Disney decides that that's not the direction they want to go in. That could happen, and that's crazy.
Is Fox News part of this?
It is not. No, Fox News is... It's like, originally the what I heard was that Fox was only selling this 21st Century Fox portion, and the rest of Fox was staying with Murdoch and Fox. But actually, the things that are not being sold are being spun off. So Fox News will be spun off into its own separate company now. I think the Murdochs will still have a fairly large share in that, but it is not like Fox, the company Fox, will no longer exist. The things that are remaining are being spun off, and everything else will be owned by Disney, which is insane.
Yeah. I think, like you said, I enjoy the Marvel movies, but The Simpsons is responsible for making me who I am. So you wait, these two things are not equal.
And I think the counterculture exists because not everything's not homogenized, right? If there's not a network that can react and respond to our corporate overlords, then that's not good. And if Disney slowly exerts its power like this, The Simpsons would not exist. I don't want to be completely apocalyptic, because you can imagine a version of a big company where they're like, okay, yeah, we have our weird stuff channel where we let all kinds of weird off-brand stuff creep in there and just do experiments, and that could happen, but that does not sound like the Disney Corporation that we all know and love. And they've experimented with that before. I mean, Miramax was a Disney company for a very long time, and they that was kind of their studio for non-Disney type branding. But yeah, I mean, they've moved away from that model. They've kind of internally homogenized and spun off or sold or shut down all their outside studios to focus on the Disney brand and the stuff directly around that. So that's not very encouraging when you're trying to say, well, maybe they'll have Fox, maybe they'll keep the Fox name and use Fox as their 20th Century Fox as their non-Disney type stuff. Maybe we don't know, but I don't know.
That's always the problem with monopolies, is you don't want the reason we bust monopolies is we don't want to have to trust to the largesse of the corporate overlords. We want to maintain that competition so that they're forced to basically serve the public best.
Yeah. The only thing that I can find to be positive about this is that if Fox was looking to sell off 21st Century Fox rather, if that was going to happen no matter what, then we'd be in this situation no matter what. So it's easy to say, oh, evil Disney has now grown, but it could have been Sony buying these companies, and they would have probably just royally fucked it up because they're Sony. So, I mean, I have faith in Disney. They know how to run a company. So that's the silver lining, I guess.
Yeah.
But it feels like Alien is a Disney property now. If you look at the top 5 highest grossing films of all time, Disney owns Avatar. Disney owns Titanic now. Both of the Avengers movies. And I think the 5th one is Jurassic World. So that's the only movie in the top 5 not owned by Disney now. And that's Universal. Wow. So it's crazy.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Maybe The Force Awakens is on. I don't even know. I think maybe all 5 of them are owned by Disney, to be honest with you. Now that I'm thinking of it.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Jurassic World passed one of the Avengers. So I think one of them is, anyway, that's not important. The point is we're all doomed. But for now, we have things to worry about, like awards nominations, because that's what's important. But the Golden Globes, the nominations came out for the Golden Globes this week, Matt. That's our next news item. And the list is very, very Golden Globy.
Okay.
The Best Motion Picture nominees were Call Me By Your Name, Dunkirk, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, The Post, and The Shape of Water. Nothing too crazy there. The Shape of Water, surprising because that's very much a genre film, and I was surprised to see it on that list, but that's good. But if you look at motion picture comedy, Matt, that's when things start to get a little weird, because we have The Disaster Artist, Get Out, The Greatest Showman, Lady Bird, and I, Tonya. Now, some of these movies are comedies. The Disaster Artist has funny moments in it. Lady Bird does too. I, Tonya, I have not seen, but I would assume that. Get Out, not really a comedy. This is the Martian winning comedy all over again, I think.
That's bizarre. is I, Tonya even out yet? Like
it's not out. It's out limited, but
okay.
Critics have seen it.
Saw a trailer for it before the movie today. Actually, looks fun. It also looks like one of those things where it's more like a aggressive biopic, like Wolf of Wall Street, where I don't know if you'd call Wolf of Wall Street a comedy. It has funny elements. It has gags, but it's I don't know.
Yeah, well,
it's all weird.
I mean, that's like all these movies have gags in them. Even the movie we're talking about today has comedic elements in it, but I wouldn't call it a comedy. The one movie that I'm shocked was not in this list was The Big Sick, which was a romantic comedy, which was one of the best romantic comedies I've ever seen, like critically acclaimed everywhere. Not on this list. Not here.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah. Some other big things here in the nominees. Best supporting actor performance in a drama. They gave a nomination to Christopher Plummer for All the Money in the World, who I don't know if you remember this, but he replaced Kevin Spacey in this movie. Very last minute, Ridley Scott spent 10 days removing Kevin Spacey from the movie and throwing Christopher Plummer in it, and I guess he's good because the Hollywood Foreign Press Association has nominated him for an award for it. So that's wow.
Yeah, that's now I kind of want to see this movie just to understand what happened there.
Yeah. Best director, bunch of dudes. That was a disappointment, but it's Guillermo del Toro for Shape of Water, Christopher Nolan for Dunkirk, Steven Spielberg, The Post, Martin McDonagh for 3 Billboards, and Ridley Scott for All the Money in the World. A very good list of directors here, but Lady Bird is kind of the front runner to win motion picture comedy, I think. And so it's going to be like the best picture, but somehow doesn't have the best director. That's weird, but that's kind of how award shows do it.
Yeah, it's unusual, but not unheard of, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think people were disappointed though because it's 5 guys, and there's a woman who made an amazing movie that's going to win all these awards, and yet somehow not worthy of the award. And I think director has been an award that's notoriously difficult for women to win, so people were kind of hoping for a nomination there, and it didn't happen. So very disappointing. But award shows are just award shows, especially the Golden Globes, which are pretty notorious for being pointless. Yeah.
Are they also pretty politicky?
Yeah, well, the thing about the Hollywood Foreign Press Association is a very small group of journalists that no one really knows very much about. So they make very weird decisions that most people don't understand. People like to say this is like a precursor to what the Oscars are going to end up being, but they don't actually know that because a lot of times they just make weird decisions that don't make any sense. I think they gave Best Picture to The Tourist a few years ago, the Johnny Depp film.
Oh my God.
That was just awful.
That was a horrible movie.
Yeah, it was so bad.
That was unwatchable.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's the point, is that the Hollywood Foreign Press is the Hollywood Foreign Press. They do they do what they want. And it's very political. If you suck up to them, you tend to do well. So that's that. The Golden Globes. There was a bunch of we'll put the link to all the nominees in the show notes, but there's a lot of TV stuff in there that's pretty exciting too. But that's that.
Okay.
Finally, box office. We got to talk about the box office because a huge movie opened, and I feel like we got to talk about the box office. Unsurprisingly, Matt, number 1 this week is Star Wars: The Last Jedi with $220 million, the second biggest opening in the history of the box office. It only beat out by guess what? Star Wars: The Force Awakens, which opened at 248. So 28 million less than the first movie. But you kind of expect that, right? I mean, that was an event. This is now a yearly occurrence. So a little bit of the magic of opening weekend has been lost. About $28 million worth of magic. But
yeah, it's amazing that the number 2 is actually that big of a gap away from the number 1. Yeah.
Because in second place, Matt, the movie did come out this weekend. Ferdinand, the John Cena is a bull animated cartoon, made $11 million this weekend.
Good for them.
You know what's interesting about this movie? This movie, the reported budget on Ferdinand was $111 million. So why would you spend $111 million on a movie and then put it out the weekend Star Wars opens? I don't understand that decision. But you know what? You know who made Ferdinand? Fox. So it doesn't matter anymore.
Oh, okay.
It's Disney. It's all Disney.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's something about one hand stealing from the other or something. Yeah.
Right. So I'm kind of, 11 million's not terrible. People went out and saw that movie instead of Star Wars. So,
yeah. I mean, if I didn't have any hard feelings toward that movie, like the advertising for it looked okay. I was like, okay, it looks like a good,
very, very much a kid's movie. Yeah.
Yeah. It looks like a kid's movie. That's fine. I'm sure my kids will watch it at some point. You tell me it cost that much money, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I don't know why.
That was a bad decision.
I don't know why. Like, why? Yeah, I don't know. But that's the box office. I think we're going to see what The Last Jedi's legs are, but I think they're predicting it'll do just slightly under Force Awakens, which is still a lot of money. I think Force Awakens made $2 billion at the end of the day. So this is going to be a huge movie, of course. It's already at $500 million after the first weekend. So
yeah,
that's right. Worldwide, of course. But yeah, it's going to be a huge movie. It's going to dominate the box office for the rest of the year. That's Star Wars. So now let's talk about it. Let's talk about The Last Jedi.
Something inside me has always been there. But now it's awake. And I need help.
I've seen this raw strength only once before. It didn't scare me enough then. It does now.
We're first going to do a very high level, very non-specific, no spoiler section. We will give the warning anyway, though, because people are very careful about their Star Wars spoilers, so I don't want to accidentally spoil anything for anyone. We're not going to talk about any details, but you will get like a shape of what the movie's about in the no spoiler section. So if you don't even want that, stop listening and go watch the movie. But here we go, Matt. Yeah. What did you think of Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi?
I liked it overall. I thought it felt very successfully like a Star Wars film. It did seem like this was made by a genuine fan of all of the original movies, and even someone who understood the visual appeal of some of the more visually interesting moments of the prequels, which was interesting because normally I feel like they try to sweep that under the rug in these new movies. There were a few parts where I felt that I didn't understand the stakes, and I felt that a scene switch would take away from the momentum of what was happening with the different plot line, or I would just I would feel taken out of the movie and just be like, this isn't really doing anything for me. What's happening on the screen right here isn't really doing anything for me. I'd rather be like back with the other characters or something. That happened a few times, not enough for me to like become irritated and think the movie was broken. I like the worst I could say is that like if I were, the editor, I would have cut some things out and maybe stretch some other things out that I liked, that I was like things I was more interested in. But that's kind of the worst I can say about it. I had a good feeling about it, and I had complicated feelings about how it ended that I haven't quite hashed out yet. So maybe we can talk about that, especially in the spoiler section.
Oh yeah, we'll get there. Yeah, definitely.
But what did you think in general?
I loved it, and the time I've gotten to sit with it, I saw it yesterday morning, so I've been with the movie for about 36 hours now, and it's my favorite Star Wars movie. And I tweeted that after I got out of the movie, and I was probably being a bit hyperbolic, but this movie gave me everything I wanted out of the series. It moves it in a new direction. It everything that kind of killed my excitement for Star Wars after the 1-2 punch of The Force Awakens and then rehashing things with Rogue One or going back to prequelitis, kind of melted away during the 2.5 hours of this movie. And I was excited about what this universe could be and where it could go, what this movie is saying, the themes that is exploring, the character decisions that we see here are all new. And yes, you're absolutely right that they're true to what Star Wars is fundamentally. Rian Johnson does have a very good understanding of Star Wars, but it's new and exciting and different in all the ways that I wanted it to be, and all the ways that The Force Awakens was not. And that just got me really jazzed. I was just like, there are so many like awe-inspiring moments in this movie that floored me. Like that, like I like felt a few times that I was like floating in my chair. Like I was mad when I was supposed to be mad. I was sad when I was supposed to be sad. The emotional core of the movie just worked on me. And, you know, it's not a perfect movie. It's absolutely not. It's a little too long. There's parts of it that there's probably a good 20 minutes that you could really just rip out of the movie and it wouldn't change much of anything. But I just feel like the core of what the movie is and what the movie's saying and what the movie's doing from minute one to the end, like, is just what I want in Star Wars. And I loved it.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. There were some, I think like on an emotional level, it worked gangbusters. It was, and unfortunately I had some of the same criticisms with The Force Awakens, that on like a nitpicky moment to moment level, there were some things where, like, even as I was driving away from the theater, I was like, oh yeah, that didn't really make sense. And then I was like, well, I don't want to be the guy who focuses on that. I want to be able to just let the emotional moments that worked on me work and be like, there, that worked. But I can't like, I had the same problem with The Force Awakens, which led to me saying it was the worst movie of the year in a joking way. That like, like walking out of the theater, I was like happy and smiling. And then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, well, no, like it's kind of dragged down by its inconsistencies. I can say what those are when we get to the spoilers, but yeah, I don't know. I'm sure other people noticed.
No, and I agree with you on some of that. I think the difference to me is the thing with The Force Awakens is, when I looked back on it and analyzed and nitpicked, which I hate doing, but I find myself doing it anyway, just like you do, the things that fell apart, but they fell apart. And then I was like, okay, well, if the plot element itself falls apart and it's not thematically saying anything, then it's just nothing. And here, when there was something that didn't make sense, or something that kind of contradicts itself, or could have been resolved in a different way, like I was like, yeah, I guess, but the thematic core of that decision, or the thematic core, or the character arc related to that move or that thing, made up for it. In like, yes, this might not make sense if you sit down and nitpick at it, but it's imperative to show the journey of this character, to show what happens to Poe over the course of this movie, and the things that he learns and the way that he changes from the beginning of the movie to the end. On like CinemaSins level nitpicking, you could poke at it and prod at it and rip it apart, but the core of it to me is the most important part. And I think that, like, I keep going back to this idea that if the movie works on you on an emotional level, if the movie gets you where it wants you to get you, if it makes you feel, if it makes you think, if it makes you question what the future of this series is and what it is saying and what it wants to do, and how it represents the changing landscape of legend and myth, in both a metatextual and a in-universe way, then the little tiny nitpicks just kind of fade away.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also think at this point, 2 hours out from the movie, I think that this movie is less broken than The Force Awakens. The things that the nitpicks that I have, I can sort of explain. Like if you ask me to say, okay, Matt, well, pretend that it's your job to explain that away. I can explain it away in a way that's, if not completely satisfying, at least coherent. Whereas certain things like, why is the Millennium Falcon right there in The Force Awakens? Just like you're just like, do we have to do it this way? Like you couldn't have thought of a better way to do that. I feel like most things here, like you said, they're not the way they are out of laziness. They're actually the way they are out of necessity, and it just so happens that they stick in your craw a little bit for reasons that do feel nitpicky, but it's hard to get past them.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like I already didn't want to talk about that aspect of it as much as I already have, but it's just like that's where my mind goes, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you're relaying through a story and there's parts that just kind of stick out to you, and I think it's funny, we're going to get to this in spoilers, but I almost know exactly which moment we're both talking about, like, because it's very prevalent, and I think it's very obvious the problems that this movie kind of has, and which characters and which storyline kind of sticks out as different and possibly unnecessary. But I still liked some of the stuff it was doing. I just think some of the execution of it was a little shaky. And I think it's okay. Like, I don't think you have to have a perfect movie. And I don't think any of the previous trilogy were perfect either. A lot of the complaints I'm seeing leveled against this movie from fans is stuff that's prevalent in the original trilogy that they've just forgotten about.
Right.
I think you were talking about how it cuts awkwardly between, because like the Return of the Jedi and like Empire Strikes Back, this movie, the characters split up pretty earlier on in the movie, and therefore we're jumping back and forth between 3 different places. And that is exactly what The Last Jedi or what Return of the Jedi does. That is exactly what Empire Strikes Back does. And yeah, sometimes those edits kill momentum. I think Return of the Jedi, the throne room scene with Luke fighting, and every time we have to cut back to Ewoks doing silly things, I'm just like, and that stuff is here too. It absolutely is.
Yeah. And another thing is there's quite a bit of melodrama, and I just ate it up actually, because I was like, yes, this is the kind of melodrama that I want from Star Wars. Not the like dourness of Rogue One.
Right.
I want, villains monologuing and just intensity. I want intensity, and I want to be on the edge of my seat, like waiting for a character to make a character decision.
Yeah.
Which is not something that happened a single time in Rogue One, and happened literally a handful of times in this movie. I was on the edge of my seat. That's why I can't be too hard on it. I was like my heart was actually hammering at a certain point in during this movie. I was like, what's it? Are they or aren't they type of situation?
Right.
Are they going to do the thing? And I was like, wow, I am super invested in this. The woman next to me kept like sitting forward abruptly, and I couldn't even like laugh at her because I was like just as tense. So it definitely works. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to talk more about that aspect, if anything. Yeah.
No, yeah, I completely agree. And there was a moment in this movie where the audience, you can feel when the audience is a movie. That's one of the reasons I will always love going to theaters, because you can feel when the movie is working on the audience. And I could feel that. There's a moment in this movie where like things kind of quiet down suddenly, and everyone in the audience is just stunned. And one guy in my theater just said, "Holy shit." And he was talking for all of us, basically. Like, no one laughed. Yeah. No one, like, there was no chuckles. There was no murmuring. It's just one guy just lost control of his emotional faculties and talked in an Alamo Drafthouse, which you're not supposed to do. But it didn't matter, because everyone was on board. Everyone in that audience was thinking, holy shit. And that, I think this movie delivers that several times throughout the runtime. Like these holy shit reveals, and they're not fake outs. It's not like reveal for the sake of reveal. It's natural progression of character. Like, of course that person's going to make that decision. Of course that happens the way it does, but it's shocking and fun and emotionally melodramatic and wonderful. You're absolutely right. I loved it so much. Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to speak vaguely, but I really did enjoy it, other than a few moments of being pulled out of it. And I almost, like, one of the first things I thought when walking out was like, I'm gonna have to watch that again, like before I really know, because certain things, I don't know, you just have to be able to view the whole thing in your mind, and it takes a couple of watches to like get that sense. That's how I feel. I want to watch it again, like as soon as I can, actually. And
this has been a pretty divisive movie. And I think it's because the movie does take risks, and it is not similar to other Star Wars movies. A lot of people are very unhappy with the movie's portrayal of Luke. I showed you the critic response versus the audience response on Friday, and it's gotten worse since then. The audience is down to like 53% on Rotten Tomatoes, which by comparison, Batman versus Superman, that terrible piece of crap, is at 63%. So audience response being that low is shocking. And I really think it's because this movie doesn't. There's a slashfilm.com article about that says this headline is, "This movie doesn't give a shit about what you think of Star Wars and about what you think Star Wars should be." This is very much a movie that is declaring what it thinks Star Wars is and what it thinks Star Wars should become. And that's going to be divisive, I think.
That's interesting because I don't even agree with that. I mean, do you like, and I can talk more about this in a spoiler context, but like there are situations and visuals and emotional scenarios that are very reminiscent of the original movies. I would say more stuff harkens back to the original trilogy than doesn't. Yes, there are new elements, but not enough to make it like a weird art house Star Wars movie. That's not what this is.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right that this is a Star Wars movie. Like this is like it refocuses thing. It changes some of the rules of Star Wars, I think, or at least the modern day rules of what Star Wars is. A lot of people are very upset by the portrayal of Luke in this movie. They do not like the character Luke has become, and they feel like it's a betrayal of who the character is in the earlier trilogy. My response to that has been, it's been 34 years. He's gone through some shit, and he's not the same person he was then. And to expect him to be the exact same person he was when he was a 23-year-old that had just mastered the Force is absurd. And I feel like there's this, people were mad at The Force Awakens, in my opinion, rightfully so, because it basically was a remake of A New Hope. This is not a remake of The Empire Strikes Back. It has similar beats, yes, but it does new and different things, and now we're kind of mad at it because of that. So we're in a situation where no one's going to be happy. Yeah,
I couldn't disagree more about the portrayal of Luke being a betrayal. I'm just like, no, this is. I mean, like, I read the Timothy Zahn Star Wars books, which are pretty much the only expanded universe material that I was really consumed. That's not true. I consumed a bunch of it. I was quite a Star Wars nerd. But those I felt were the most like, these are the continuing adventures of Luke Skywalker and his friends, basically as if you had an episode 7, 8, and 9, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you read them or if you're familiar with them at all.
I'm not at all. I read no expanded universe stuff.
I mean, it just seemed like that author was taking just sort of continuing the themes and just trying to extrapolate forward. This is not what that is. This is not the continuing adventures of Luke Skywalker. This is older Luke Skywalker, like you said, different situation.
Yeah.
And so maybe people were expecting it to be something that it wasn't, but this is completely consistent with the character, though.
Yeah, well, so. and one of the big things that the movie is about, I'll say this in very broad, non-spoiler terms, is about the idea that characters do not live up to the legend of what they were, that people and legends are different things, and learning to balance the difference between those things and to accept that people have faults and flaws and failures is paramount to going forward. Because there's this whole thing with Star Wars that I think this movie addresses head on, and you could even argue The Force Awakens was kind of as well. The original trilogy, there was good guys and there were bad guys, and the good guys won. And then we come back 30 something years later and we see that they didn't conquer evil, that evil's not gone. In fact, evil has taken hold and taken over again. So there's this through line of, okay, that way didn't work. We didn't restore peace to the galaxy forever. Evil came back almost immediately and took hold again. And there's this new generation kind of dealing with that and trying to decide, okay, how do we approach this? What does this mean? What do we do going forward? How do we look at this stuff, knowing what we know now? And how do we take the things that we've learned from the people in our past and use that, but also carve a new way for us, a new place, hopefully more successful. How do we get hope back in a different kind of way? Because it can't be the same way as before. And that's very meta, but it's also very in-universe thematic as well. And I loved that.
Yeah, right. I agree with all that. You can't just have the same story be told in these like, perhaps some people do want that. Perhaps some people did just want, I want the Star Wars trilogy again, but with different characters.
Right.
But it should involve a character learning the Force and becoming like they wanted the same arcs, and maybe they're subconsciously or whatever disappointed that this movie isn't just Empire with the characters switched around.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And I think the best line in the trailer was Luke saying, "This is not going to go the way you think." And I think that's the message of the movie as a whole. Like, this is not going to be the movie you thought it was. And I think that's good, because I didn't want that same movie. And I think generally everyone agreed that just rehashing these old movies was not a good idea. But now we're seeing pushback on the other side here. But I mean, I think that's a vocal minority. I think the majority of the people actually really do very much love this film. So what did you think, before we move to spoilers, what did you think of the new characters? What did you think of Rose? I guess, in the vaguest way possible.
Yeah, the vaguest way possible. I mean, she felt like a normal person, which is, I think, what she was kind of supposed to be. Yeah,
that's key to some of the themes of the film. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, she served her role very well. They were exploring some things with her that, interestingly enough, remind me of Rogue One more than anything else. Not in a bad way. It just happens that's the overlap that I perceive.
Okay.
There were some themes touched upon in this movie that were not touched upon in the other movies. So I think she was one of the vehicles for that, definitely.
Yeah. I agree. I liked her a lot too. Yeah. My wife was not happy with her. She did not like her, for story reasons that we really can't go into. But I think she had no problem with the character as it was written. Just how the character interacted with the story and the character's purpose within the story, she wasn't a fan of, which I understand. Like a lot of the complaints I hear about this movie, I'm like, okay, I get that. I don't agree, but I get it.
Yeah. Right. I can see feeling that way, but right. I didn't feel that way.
Yeah. One of the things, the last thing I want to talk about is Rian Johnson and his directing. I think you touched on this a bit when you were saying, when we first started, but this is probably one of the most beautifully shot Star Wars films I've ever seen. It's how Rian Johnson uses the color red a lot in this movie. And he uses it to great effect. And some of the composition, some of the lighting, some of like the things that he imagines and executes is jaw dropping. It really is. And he filmed this on film. He used mostly practical effects where he could. When there's aliens, they're usually like practical aliens, and there's some CGI addition to that. Of course, there's still a ton of CGI in this movie, but he really worked hard to make this seem like a world. And as much as I have mixed feelings about the casino planet, I thought it was pretty incredible to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree completely. I mean, just almost everything about it was visually, it's one of those movies you could take almost any frame of it and it would be a painting.
Yep.
It's very well organized and everything. Yeah.
Okay. I think we've gone far enough with being vague in our likings of this movie. I think overall we both really liked it. I am, for the first time, excited about what comes next, and kind of bummed that Ryan's handing this back to J.J. Abrams now. I think Rian fixed a lot of the J.J. isms of The Force Awakens, and I hope we don't just turn back to that. But I am now really excited for what he could do with a trilogy of his own that has nothing to do with any of these characters. So yeah, it got me excited for that.
Yeah, what we know about him is that he he understands like the heart and
Yeah,
connecting you with the character and then pulling on that connection to make you feel things. That's why my heart was hammering during this movie. I don't think my heart hammered at any point during Force Awakens.
No.
If I'm going to be coldly cynical, I really don't think that JJ can do it. I don't think he gets it. I don't think he has that power as a storyteller.
Yeah, let's talk spoilers. Let's get into the meat of this, and we get to say what we loved about this. And like you said, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about our little nitpicks. I think we have them. We can address them, but let's talk about why this movie thematically worked on both of us so well. And I think the first way to get to it is Luke Skywalker himself. Let's talk about the character that Luke has become and how this reflects on the themes of the movie. So you said you strongly disagreed with people's indication that this was a betrayal of Luke Skywalker. Could you just elaborate a little more on that?
Yeah, I mean, this just especially seems like the Luke Skywalker that we knew in Return of the Jedi, where he was sort of this, the way he's introduced in that movie, he has the ambiguous black cloak and green lightsaber, where you're kind of worried about how he's doing, and then he's essentially he's a person that's full of doubt and conflict and uncertainty mainly in the Empire and Jedi, is very afraid of facing Vader. I feel like people don't remember who his character actually is. He's a reluctant hero. He's an uncertain hero. He does what he has to do, what he feels he has to do, because he's a good person. And when he creates in this movie, you learn that he created a Jedi school, which he knew he was going to do. That's in every piece of expanded media about Luke Skywalker. But this idea that he raises a student who is turning evil, and for someone with his background, that's such a terrible failure, and not a failure that he has any reason to be equipped to handle. It's not like he was really properly trained, and I mean, I guess people. So people could be objecting to the. I guess people are objecting to the fact that he hides away, but
I don't.
I don't know what they're objecting to, because on the one hand, there's he has this moment of weakness where he thinks about killing Kylo and then he doesn't, which to me is just that's totally within character, and especially the fact that he chooses not to.
Yeah.
And then the part where he hides away from the world is he explains to
Rey
to Rey in perfectly sensible terms. Of just what do you think I'm going to do? Do you think I'm going to fly out there and defeat the First Order? I'm hiding away because I'm not relevant and I want this to all just end.
Yeah. And he can't,
his argument makes sense.
He can't deal with his failure. And I love that he has failed. And I think if you break down people's complaints with it, I think that is it, is that Luke has fundamentally failed, and he's flown away, and he's become kind of like a kooky hermit. A lot of the complaints I saw with him, milking the alien and drinking the milk, and how goofy and weird that was. But he's been living by himself for 20 years. He's this kooky weirdo. And that seems perfectly in character when you live off by yourself like this.
Yeah.
And
I mean, he only abandoned Kylo fairly recently, right? I mean, he hasn't been.
I don't know. I don't. It wasn't exactly clear how long he's been gone.
Yeah, but that was just. See, that's the thing. That's just silly Star Wars stuff.
Right.
Did you not watch the other movies?
That's what I need to stress here. There were so many people that are saying that this movie has been Disneyfied and Marvelized because of the humor in it. And I'm do you not watch Star Wars? Empire Strikes Back, the dark, gritty Empire Strikes Back had a 20-minute sequence where C-3PO is broken into pieces and R2 is having to slowly build him back together. And then he attaches his head on backwards. That's so crazy.
Right.
And it's what do you want? Yes, the humor is a little different because culturally our humor has shifted a little bit. We do not tell jokes the same way we did in the 70s and 80s, but the series has always been goofy, has always had slapstick type humor in it, and it still does.
Yeah. If anything, this it's toned down in these new ones.
Right.
3PO has much fewer lines in these two movies than he did in any of the prior ones. And people think of 3PO as being annoying, although they never seem to complain about him in any specific way.
Yeah, but I Luke is so central to all this, and his journey that he goes on through the course of this film, because the Yoda being in this movie, Matt, I can't believe I didn't get that spoiled for me. I was shocked and floored, and it's a puppet again, and it looks right, and I was like, oh my God, like, and he comes in and he's like distills the theme of the movie down for us, like the idea that you pass on everything, including your failures. And how failures can be a lesson just as much as successes can is so great. And that's like that itself was Luke's fundamental failure that he didn't realize. And he learns from that, and he makes choices here that lead to his death, but in a really great way, I thought. What did you think of his third act, that his Force hologram and his eventual death?
I mean, it was cool. It was very Rian Johnson, actually.
Yeah, it
reminded
really was.
Me of Rian Johnson's like playing with playing with the established magic system, or if you will, that he's created throughout the film, in a way that gets you. I guess I was like, oh, I guess he's dead now. Like, that was my
my interpretation was that Force hologramming like drained him of his power so much that he just passed on. And
I think that's true. In fact, as soon as that happened, I remembered when Kylo earlier in the movie had said, like, this level of effort should kill you,
right? Yeah.
Regarding Rey, already suggesting to you that this is a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
So that's all fine. Yeah.
And my favorite part about it was it wasn't a cheat, right? Like, we'll talk about the gorgeous planet with the salt on top of the red rock, which was just so beautiful. But Johnson puts all this right in front of our face, because we specifically do an insert shot of Luke's shoe without any dust on it or anything. We like specifically compare his to Kylo's, and how Kylo has dust on him and Luke doesn't. And then there's that throwaway line from Poe was like, there has to be a way out of here. I mean, how did Luke get here? Right. Like, at the time, you're like, yeah, and then you just move on. But it's not a cheat. Like, he didn't cheat to get us there. He actually puts it right in front of our face, and you just don't notice it. Like, Luke looks younger. He looks completely different. He's actually dressed in the exact same way he was when he almost killed Kylo, and that's intentional. He's trying to drive him crazy, but like, I just love that it's not, he didn't cheat. Like, there wasn't just that for the sake of doing it.
Yeah, there's lots of cool stuff. I mean, everything about it makes sense in retrospect, like where he's avoiding Kylo's saber instead of fighting with him, and the fact that he stands and is shot by like a billion blasters and is fine. And at that moment, you're like, wow, I guess
he must be really powerful.
Yeah, but
it's great because in the moment you're almost like, okay, like Luke's 60 something years old, like he can move like this anymore. And you're kind of like, the cynical person in the back of my brain was like, come on, this is a little silly. This is like when Yoda was dancing around. But then, of course, the movie pays it off in this amazing way. And you're like, oh, okay, well, that makes total sense to me now. And then he brushes his shoulder off, Matt. And that might not be an in-universe reference. Like, that's very much a 21st century Earth reference, the brush your shoulder off thing. But I don't care. That was awesome.
Yeah, right. That's the kind of thing where it's like you would have complained if, I don't know, people complain about the things that are references, and they complain about the things that are not references. What do you want them to do? What do you want?
I know. And so, okay, so let's talk about Kylo and Rey here for a bit, because I think they are front and center in this movie, and the drama of the movie kind of hinges on the two of them and the journey they take, and they're perfectly foiled, I think. Like, and it ties into not only like audience expectations. Like, there's this, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. Rian Johnson doesn't give a fuck about the mystery box. He doesn't care. Everything that was set up as a stupid mystery in The Force Awakens, who are Rey's parents? What are the Order of Ren? Where does Snoke come from? Like, all these things that only matter because the movie seems to like trying to be convincing you that they're really important. Like, they're not important thematically. They don't touch anything on what The Force Awakens was trying to say as a film, but they're just JJ's mystery box. And the first scene of this movie, or one of the first scenes, is Luke getting his famed saber that they were trying to get to him the whole time and chucking it over his shoulder. And that is absolutely Rian Johnson making a statement here. Like, these things that you think are important are not important. Rey's parents, it doesn't matter. Where did Snoke come from? It doesn't matter. Like, who are the Knights of Ren? I don't care. Like, it's these characters. It's the journey of Rey, and Rey's parents not being anyone is absolutely important to what the movie is trying to say. The movie is trying to say that the Force is not for the Jedi. The Force is for everyone and everything. The galaxy is not for the Skywalkers anymore. Your stupid in-family squabbling needs to come to an end, and it's time for other people to step up now. And that's done through the Rose character. That's done through the reveal that Rey is not a special, like, magic chosen one. She's just a girl that happens to be strong in the Force.
Yeah, that was excellent. I like that the lightsaber moment and the, like, you're nobody moment were kind of thematically mirror each other. I thought the lightsaber thing was hilarious because I was just imagining, like, sitting down to the writing challenge of, like, okay, now I have to write a sequel to The Force Awakens, and it's obvious that JJ had no idea what he wanted to happen next.
Right.
So, and you're just like, what the fuck do I do with this? And you're like, oh, okay, well, I'll just make Luke say, what the fuck do I do with this?
Yeah.
And throw it over his shoulder.
Right.
Because if you had nothing in mind for it, then why respect it, basically?
Yeah. And the thing I don't understand is, like, people are mad because all these things were set up and now they learn that they weren't important. What would it have been satisfying to learn that Rey was a Skywalker? Would that have satisfied you? That would have been a boring choice. Oh, you're just another Skywalker. It's just this continual cycle of this one family and their family issues with each other and the entire galaxy suffering because of it. And this movie is very much saying, no, we're done with that. Like, it's important. I think the movie is saying it's important. The legacy, the things that we talk about, the legend of Luke Skywalker and who he is important. But it's not everything. We have to move on from that. We learn from it and we move on from it.
And interestingly, that's what Kylo wants.
Well, but kind of.
Well, I think it's really interesting that Snoke is actually, man, I really feel like Snoke is, like, now that I'm thinking about this, this didn't occur to me until you were saying all that, but, like, Snoke is the stand-in for the perspective of, like, we want to make another Star Wars episode 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
Because he's like, he literally says, like, I want my own Vader.
Yeah.
And he styles himself after Palpatine in so many subtle and not so subtle ways. And
his whole throne room was like, as much as he was making fun of Kylo Ren for, like he called the mask he was wearing silly, like that was Ren's idea. But yeah, you're absolutely right. He wanted to be the Emperor. The way he styled his guard, the way that his throne looks, like, he wants to be Palpatine. You're absolutely right.
And he's actually like a low rent Emperor because his face is all fucked up, and he's like angrier and more like gloaty, like the Emperor. I don't know. The Emperor was so much more like menacing and silky.
Yeah.
And you know, he just seems like a low rent Emperor, and then he's basically and Kylo Ren's saying, like, no, and that's his whole thing, is like, burn the past. Not only do I want to kill my parents, I want to kill this guy.
Right.
I don't want to be a Sith. I don't want to be a Jedi. I don't want any of this stuff anymore. Like, this is let's throw it all away, because why should we be beholden to this? And that's what the movie is saying too, which I think is cool, because, like, Kylo is a very interesting character, because you can't call him the villain, you know, straight up. Like in terms of what he actually does during this movie, especially, like, he holds off from killing Leia. He kills Snoke. You know, he doesn't do a lot of villainous stuff in this movie, actually. He's very conflicted, I guess I should say.
Yeah, he is. And he's a really fascinating character. And I love that, like, everyone thought this was going to be the Kylo Ren redemption story. And it might still be at the end of the day. But right now we're in very much a place where he's at least found out what he wants to do and what he wants to become. And you're right, it does mirror that central theme of the film. But I think where I land on it is, Kylo's perspective on that is a overly extreme version of it, that we have to burn everything down. None of it matters anymore. Whereas I think what Yoda and Luke are saying through their conversation is, yeah, we have to move past this. We can't always be part of this. But that doesn't mean it's not important. Like, Kylo is burn the tree, burn the books. I think what the other side ends with is, yeah, burn the tree down. Burn the religion, burn the past, but keep the books. Because at the end, she does have the book. She took the book.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, we have to move on from the past. We have to reorient and we redirect ourselves. But the end of the movie is a kid playing with a Luke Skywalker toy and then going outside and looking up at the stars, hopefully. So it's not saying that the past does not matter, but it's saying we cannot be completely beholden to it. Yeah, and I think that's Kylo's mistake and misinterpretation of that.
Yeah, and like you say, it works in a very meta way regarding the movie, because it's like, yeah, we're taking the themes and the stuff that works, and we don't need to have Jedi and Sith and the Skywalker name, and like it's still worth something without all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, let's talk about the things I didn't like quite as much.
Yeah.
Let's talk about
nitpicks.
Let's talk about Poe and Poe's storyline, because I actually quite like Poe's storyline. I like we have as this character who at the beginning is this headstrong guy who in the opening like has to accomplish this objective, and he succeeds, but at this great cost, which actually the opening of this film is excellent. I think those first 15 minutes with the space battle is one of the best openings of Star Wars I've seen. I think it's really good.
Yeah. I agree. It was, throughout that whole sequence, I was like, yes, this is going very well.
Yeah. Yeah. And so he takes that and he like is told specifically by Leia, like, sometimes you need to listen to other people. Sometimes you need to step back and not always push forward. And then he's immediately thrown into a situation where he does the same thing, and to the detriment of everything, because the plan that he set in motion ended up getting 90% of the rebellion killed. It like not directly, but indirectly. Because he sent Finn and Rose out on this mission that got Benicio to the ship, which exposed what the secret rebel plan was. And my biggest complaint with this is that Laura Dern's character could have just told him the plan. And I've thought about this a while, because that is very true. Like, if Laura Dern just tells Poe the plan, then a bunch of people don't die. But the point of his storyline, the point of his arc, is that she shouldn't have to tell him the plan.
Right.
That he is not in charge, that he is not in command, that he needs to sometimes sit back and follow orders and trust in the people above him to make the decisions that he doesn't have full understanding of. And so she should not have had to do that. Like, that's not an expectation that he should have had. And you could argue that when he's in full mutiny mode, maybe that's the time to be like, okay, no, like, seriously, we actually do have a plan now. But maybe she was trying to tell him, and he just like, because he kept telling her to shut up and stop talking, right? So maybe like she was trying to explain at that point, but I don't know. Like, there's nitpicks in there, but I loved his arc overall. Yeah,
I don't think that really bothered me, because I felt like I did feel like his arc was maybe left incomplete, because it's not like at any point he ever makes a decision to just follow orders, even if he doesn't know what's going on.
Does.
Like that.
Like at the end, at the end, he calls them off as they're charging to blow up the weapon, and he's told, "No, you have to back off. You're not going to make it."
Yeah, okay, you're right.
And he makes that call, and
then
of course Finn, who has not learned that lesson, decides not to go for it.
And then later Leia kind of rewards that by being like, "What are you looking at me for? Follow him."
Right.
No, you're right. I just forgot about that beat. I did need to watch this movie more than once to nail it all down. But yeah, no, I don't think that was a nitpick of mine, actually.
Okay, so let's move to what I was hinting at, what I think is going to be both of our biggest problems with the film, which is Finn and Rose's storyline.
That was definitely strange. You mentioned the casino planet already. that felt strange. That was that had some very bad prequel vibes, because I'm like, this is like the 50s diner,
right? It's
where
pod
it's
racing,
it's just like a thing that exists in the world, and then we just kind of make it a little bit Star Warsy, and we're having these kind of pretty heavy-handed kind of 1% type commentary.
But like my frustration with the casino scene is I don't think it works. I think it's very tangential to the overall plot, but I like what it's trying to say. I like the 1% talk. I like that for the first time in a Star Wars movie, we're talking about the effect that these Star Wars have on normal people and the actual world, and not just these super powerful, all important Skywalkers and the people they surround themselves with. It's, look what happens on this planet. The idea that there are people getting rich off of this continued conflict between these two sides. And there are people suffering because of that. And it's this, I think that reinforces the idea that we need a change. You can't just you can't just continue this cycle of rebels fight bad guys. Bad guys lose, rebels win, then bad guys come back later, more powerful, and then we keep going again and again and again. Like, we have to break off from this. And the way to break off from this is through this idea brought forth by Rose as our stand-in as the common man. And I like all that. I just think it's just kind of clunkily executed throughout the scene. Like, it's very weird. Like, I think Benicio del Toro's character is awful. I don't like him at all. And
what I was going to say about that is, like, I'm not even sure. Are we supposed to think he's right or not? I don't know. Because he's like, yeah, they're all the same. And it's like, well, actually, no. That's like saying the Allies and the Nazis were the same.
Right.
Like they're two sides of a conflict. That doesn't make them morally equal. Sorry.
Right.
But he sort of gets to, like, say his line, and
and then presumably just dies. I mean, maybe he'll be back. I don't know.
I bet he escaped to be a recurring character.
Yeah. The thing I was most terrified by is that they were going to do a Han Solo with him. And he was going to come save them in the end and be like, just kidding. When the walker in the, I thought, and it ends up being BB-8, I thought that was Benicio had snuck into a walker and hacked it. And I was like, oh no. Like, BB-8 doing that is silly, but I like that so much more than Benicio redemption suddenly. I don't know, like, that his character felt weird. And like, again, I know what the movie is doing with the fact that their plan does nothing and actually doesn't matter at all, but it just felt divorced from the rest of the movie in a big way. And the thematic elements are there, but execution wise, I just, like, if I'm going to cut 20 minutes from the movie, it's going to be everything on that planet. That's what it's going to be.
Yeah. I'm again, this is one of those things I'm going to have to see it again, because I don't remember if they really accomplish absolutely nothing, because, like, even in Jedi, the Han and Leia subplot involves them having to blow up the shield generator, which actually does let the fleet attack, which actually does let the Death Star be destroyed. So, like, it really does let the wind out of the sails when you have a plot line that just doesn't matter. And like I said, it matters thematically. It matters as it reflects Poe's arc. But I haven't seen it again, but I can assure you, everything they do does not do anything. In fact, it actually makes things worse, because they put Benicio on the ship and get him into a position where he can then reveal the rebels' secret plan, which means that all those ships get blown up. It does. And like, I think Finn's arc is the most confused of the movie. I'm not sure, like, there's moments where it ties into the whole, never meet your heroes, stop being so obsessed with the legend of a person, because Rose sees Finn as this perfect person, and then one of their first interactions is her realizing that her hero is actually not as heroic as everyone thought he was. But I don't know, like, it's hard to track Finn's arc, because his big moment is basically becoming the Poe and ignoring orders and going forward again. And Rose saves him, and then gives what I think is the best line in the movie, where she says, this is how we win, not by destroying what we hate, but by saving what we love. And I think it's a wonderful line, and it distills
a lot of the central Star Wars themes down to a couple sentences, and it's great. But what does that have to do with Finn?
Yeah. I guess I agree that I'm not sure if the movie knows what it's doing with him. Like his arc as like former stormtrooper who faces his fears and stands up to, you know, the forces that oppressed him was completed in the last movie.
Yeah.
Already. So I don't feel like they successfully created a new arc for him.
Right. Yeah. Where does he go from here? And you can kind of see like maybe that's his arc, that he learned to run away, or he was afraid and ran away in the first one and learned to stand up to them. And then this, it's kind of taking the same journey that Poe does, that maybe you need to learn that you cannot let your hatred of these people dictate your every action. That like he specifically like goes all out against Phasma and kills Captain Phasma, who, poor Gwendolyn Christie, Matt, like this is the most underwritten character in this whole thing. Like she's such a good actress and just never gets anything interesting to do.
Yeah.
Like
I get to see her eye for a second.
Yeah. Is she going to be dead for real this time, or are they going to bring her back again? I have no idea.
I think she's going to be dead.
I hope so.
I think she's dead. Yeah.
Yeah, but like he does learn that, and I love the relationship between him and Rose, although I think it felt very one-sided. Like it felt very much she's more into him than he is her. But I still liked it. But yeah, I mean, the casino, like that whole plot line was the most nitpicky I could get. But Matt, it resulted in hyperspace battering ram, which is the most beautiful shot in the history of Star Wars.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. That was definitely Rian Johnson being like, this is I'm gonna bring in some modern sci-fi influences.
Yeah.
And that's not, you know, that could not have looked cooler, let me put it that way.
Yeah.
Like the way they chose to shoot it and everything.
That's when the guy said "holy shit" in my screening. Yeah. When that happened, like the fact that he chose to cut the sound there for a few beats, like, just made it even better. And it's so great. It's so great.
Yeah. So that does segue into my nitpick. Matt's nitpick corner, though.
Okay.
Because like stuff like that, like that completely worked dramatically for me, but I was like, and this is just one of many things where like my brain gets hung up on it, and I'm like, well, if you can take out like an arbitrarily large starship with a hyperspace kinetic warhead, why didn't they just use this trick on every previous large ship they had to fight, including the Death Stars? Like, yeah,
and I think I see what you're saying there, and my answer is I don't care. Well, and like,
right, and I don't care either. But I can't get it out of my head as a like, but yeah.
Well, I think this whole problem was created because in The Force Awakens we made it so hyperspace can jump through shields, and that was something that never, I don't think, could happen before. But that's what they did. They jumped to get through the Death Star 3's shields. And now if you can do that, that opens up this possibility. And Rian Johnson said, okay, I'm going to do it because it's going to be awesome. But yeah, you're absolutely right that they could just take one of their fleet ships and hyperjump into the Death Star. And that's the end of the Death Star.
Right. Like there's a lot of stuff surrounding their little chase that bothered me.
It's very contrived.
Contrived is exactly the word. Yes. Yeah. Because, I mean, first of all, it's not how spaceships work.
Well, it's like if the smaller ship is fast enough to where they can't chase it, then they would get away because they would not just stay at the same distance.
Yes.
For 18 hours.
Right.
But did you see Battlestar Galactica, the new version? It very much reminded me of that. It very much reminded me of that because like they're just constantly being hunted, and I wish they could have just like done it more like Battlestar Galactica, where they jump and then eventually the bad guys find them. So instead of this slow burn chase, it's more like they're just jumping through space, and like they jump and then they're safe for a bit, but then the Empire or the First Order finds them and they have to jump again. And I wish it was more like that instead of this just like, okay, we can't go fast enough to catch up to them, but they can't go fast enough to get away. even though that doesn't make any sense with physics.
I mean, at the very least, the gap would have been widening over time if their engines were more powerful and it was a faster ship. Like, I'm actually willing to believe that the Star Destroyers and the small ship were both accelerating the whole time. And because it's space, you can choose whatever frame of reference you want, and you can just choose the frame of reference to be the Star Destroyers and make it look like they're going at a similar speed.
Yeah.
But yes, the faster ship still should have been going faster.
Right.
You could say that what they did is they just wanted to get ahead of the Star Destroyers, and then once they were out of range, cut their burn rate so that they could stay ahead longer. But that. Yeah,
I think that's probably that's the headcanon. I mean, that has to be exactly what it was.
And that this is what I mean when I say a lot of these things can be papered over with like, okay, let me really think this through way more than. See, that's the thing is, I actually think Rian Johnson probably thought it through, and he was like, nobody wants to hear this shit. Nobody wants to hear this explanation. So I'm just going to have it be there, and you can figure it out if you want. So I mean, like, so my other big nitpick that distracted me too much was. Okay, so they basically replicate the Hoth part, right?
Yeah.
You have they're in a fortified position, and the Empire stand-in lands their walkers, and they even land a big laser thing so they can shoot a hole in the door. Okay, the reason they didn't just do orbital bombardment in Hoth was because the rebels had an enormous shield generator that was shielding their whole base, and that's why they had to do the landing party. And there's a very emphasized moment where they shoot out, where one of the landed walkers shoots out the shield generator, and that's what allows things to progress from there. There's no reason why they couldn't have just shot at the mine from space with their incredibly powerful weapons.
No, there's a perfectly good reason. It's because the ground is red and has salt on it, and that would look really cool to have speeders that drag along. Like, yeah, I mean, I totally get what you're saying, and I completely agree. But
and also, just I think Kylo at this point wanted to like murder these people with his bare hands, basically.
And personally, like he wanted to be down there doing it. Yeah. And I get what you're saying, and I completely understand why that could be something that would hang you up. And I just loved every bit of that third act, so I'm just gonna whistle past it. And sometimes I think that's the thing sometimes with movies like this. Like, this is not a perfect movie. Absolutely not. I would never call it a perfect movie. But the things that are good, the sum of the parts outweigh every little nitpick and problem and inconsistency I have with it. Like, I didn't like Leia's force float back into the ship. Didn't like that. I thought it was weird. I understand, like, it didn't, like, doing that doesn't actually take a lot of force power, and I'm completely fine with them exploring Leia's use of the Force, because I think that was criminally underdone in the original trilogy, but it just came off as kind of goofy. But I don't care. Like, I just don't care.
Yeah, right. That's one thing where I'm gonna have to see how I feel on a rewatch, because I was just like, oh, okay. Because at the moment I was like, oh, I thought this is how we were killing Princess Leia.
Right.
Because, I'm just kind of surprised they didn't actually.
I think it felt. And I don't know what they're, honestly, the biggest question is, what are they going to do in the next movie? Because she's very much still alive in the story. And the trilogy, as it was originally written, was each old cast member would get a movie dedicated towards them. The first one was Han Solo. This was Luke Skywalker's movie. And episode 9 was going to be Carrie Fisher's. And they've had to obviously make huge changes. And I'm kind of glad they didn't just kill her off, because that feels weird when she's actually dead. And I do actually think she gets a couple rather beautiful send-off moments in this movie. I think when she says goodbye to Laura Dern's character, that line where, like, they both say, "May the Force be with you" at the same time, and she says, "You go ahead, I've said it enough," is, like, I cried. Like, because, like, the real world implications of that scene where we know Carrie Fisher has passed away is so touching, and it destroyed me. And like, so I'm happy with the way they sent her off, but it is going to be interesting to see how they shift around that in the next movie.
Yeah. I guess we'll have to see. I mean, I don't know. I do wonder how much of this they had planned out ahead of time. And I suspect not a whole lot in detail.
No,
because it seems like a lot of the stuff in this movie was kind of fresh. One thing I really did like that we didn't really talk about was all of the interludes where Kylo and Rey are communicating.
Oh yeah, those were great. That's sexual tension, Matt. They want to bang each other.
I thought that was the most. I thought that was like the best part. Like that was the part I was always excited to get back to because I think those two characters have the most pathos and are you and all of the parts where I said my heart was hammering were like related to is she going to find out who her parents are, or is Kylo going to turn, or is she going to turn? I really thought she was going to turn.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't. If she had turned, I probably wouldn't have felt like it was fully earned because I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this in general because like I think it could. I think this series could do with a Rey turning evil plot line, but also I'm not sure if they did it, if I would buy it. So I'm definitely of two minds about it.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea that the future of this is not like, will you be dark side or light side, but rather, will you do the right thing or will you do the wrong thing? Like, that seems like where we're moving towards. Like, will Rey be a Jedi? I mean, I guess Luke kind of declares that, like with his wonderful line of everything in that sentence you just said was wrong, which I love. Like, Rian Johnson is so good with setup and payoff, like so good.
Yeah.
Like that was so wonderful. But like Rey, he says, I will not be the last Jedi. Like Rey will be a Jedi, but a very much different kind, I think. I think the exploration of that and what it means for what is turning, what is being light side, what is being dark side, like how are these characters going to interact? I think it's very interesting to see what we're going to do in the ninth movie. And the fact that I can say that is pretty remarkable, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree because both Rey and Kylo have thrown out, the old paradigm basically, right. Because they're both, Kylo is much more trained than her, but she's completely untrained. She's going to have to figure everything out on her own. And he is, willfully rejected like the idea of being a Sith or whatever.
Right.
He's just going to do his own thing and forge what that is exactly. He's definitely like hasn't decided he's going to be a good guy.
Right.
But I think that's much more interesting. That it's not just putting him in the boxes of like, oh, yep, he is the Sith, and that means he needs to go find an apprentice.
Right. Right.
Which we've seen so many times.
Yeah, and I really hope, I think it'd be very easy for J.J. Abrams to go back into that and then have the next movie be that Kylo has recruited an apprentice and we have to fight against the apprentice and then go after Kylo. And I really hope that's not the direction we go with it. I really do. I'm very interested in seeing, because the First Order has won at this point. Like the rebellion is small enough to fit on the Millennium Falcon. That's how much of the rebellion is left at the end of this film. So they've won, and it's going to be very interesting to see, like, Kylo is obsessed with this idea of burning down the past and shaping something new. What is his First Order that has won and taken over the galaxy going to look like? How is it going to differ from the Empire? Is he going to do it the same, or is he really honestly going to build out something new and unique and different that our heroes have to find a way to combat? And I think it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I always thought that one of the more interesting beats of Vader's character was that at the end of Empire, he's not saying like join the Emperor, he's saying join me,
right?
And together we will rule the galaxy and bring order to the galaxy. And his character actually wants to bring order. It's not about power for him; it's about order.
Right. And
that's exactly what Kylo says here. He says we'll create a new order and bring structure and which makes sense for his character too, because he was a character whose dad was Han Solo, so his life probably lacked structure.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Matt, how cool was their lightsaber fight though? That was
fucking cool.
Great. Yeah. That was great. There's a moment where the two characters are standing side by side fighting together, and you're like, holy shit. And you're into it. And then I love that the movie takes that moment lets us relish in how cool it is. And then the moment fades and Rey calls to him, like Rey thinks she's won now. He's turned to her side. She did everything she accomplished. And then there's this moment where reality kind of seeps back in. And you're just like, oh, wait, these two people still have opposing viewpoints. And suddenly you realize that, like, that's gone. And now you're just left with the two of them alone in a room together. And you're like, oh, shit's about to go down.
Yeah.
It was so masterfully done. Like, I loved it so much.
Yeah, the whole thing with him killing Snoke was also another classic Rian Johnson, like using what you like, making you understand the way the power works in a very subtle way, and then exploiting that for awesome effect.
Yeah, not to bleed podcasts, but it felt a little wormy to me. Like it made sense in context of what his power was. Like, he sees the future, and he sees he sees what the person wants to do, but he doesn't see the true intent behind it. And it felt like this is a power, and that's its inherent weakness, and it's exploited for us.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. He could feel Kylo's intention to kill his enemy, but not who his enemy was.
Right. Right.
Which is another thing that kind of makes me think of him as kind of a sap, because
right. Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like Palpatine wouldn't have fallen for that, but I don't know. Palpatine did get suckered by Vader, so maybe I'm giving him too much credit.
It is so great that, like, after The Force Awakens, everyone was talking about, like, how much of a wannabe Kylo Ren is, and he's like this wannabe that's trying to recapture, is obsessed with his grandfather, trying to recapture this past, and no one said that about Snoke. And then we're presented that in this movie, and it's never explicitly stated, but it is there. Like, you're absolutely right that how the throne room is decorated, how he looks, how he holds himself, even retroactively looking back on the first movie where he's this this super powerful like hologram face is like channeling Emperor.
Yeah.
And turns out, no, you're just some dude that fashioned yourself the Emperor. And it's pathetic, and you're dead now, huh?
Yeah, right. And I find that I don't even care who you were or where you're from.
Right. Like, and that's some of the criticism was, like, it didn't matter where Snoke was. And I'm like, where did Snoke come from? Who he's related to? And I'm like, yeah, that's the point. Like, it doesn't matter. He's just a bad guy. He's just some stupid bad guy. Like, we didn't know in the original trilogy, you didn't know where the Emperor came from. He was just the Emperor. He was some scary, powerful dude.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I don't care about the Knights of Ren. I don't care. And I'm so glad the movie doesn't either. So glad.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, that just seemed like a very JJ, like, we'll make this an enticing looking box about an evil supervillain team, basically, and fill that in later. And it's like, that's not thematically interesting.
Yeah, JJ has admitted that the contents of the mystery box don't actually matter to him. That what is in the box doesn't have to be relevant to the plot or the arcs or the theme. By just putting a thing in a box, you artificially grant it importance, and that tends to perk people's interest, because you're saying, look, here's a thing and it's going to be important, and it doesn't matter if it's importance doesn't actually make sense, but you want to find out what it is now, don't you? So you're going to watch the thing. It's smart in a cynical, like, narratively boring kind of way.
Yeah. Well, it's lazy. I mean, it's lazy. It's just it's a one trick pony.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like a real writer will absolutely use the concept of a mystery box in addition to 1,000 other ways of manipulating emotion by creating connection to characters and plot and themes. JJ only seems to be able to push this one button that he just does over and over again in everything.
Plus, it's not even Star Warsy. Like, who Rey's parents are only matter in context of what we know about the franchise. Like, who is Darth Vader was not important to the Star Wars trilogy until we found out it was Luke's father. Like, that was not a mystery box, and that's why the reveal worked as well as it was, because we had no idea that importance was even there, that relation was even there until it was showed. Like, if Star Wars had tried to paint this big picture of who is Darth Vader, who's this mysterious person, it really is going to matter who he is, then that reveal would not have worked as well.
Yeah. Yeah, if anything, they restrained themselves from it such that one of the things about that movie that like you forget after watching 1,000 times is that Vader, you don't actually understand why he's looking for Skywalker for the whole movie.
Right. He's just kind of weirdly obsessed with him. Yeah.
Yeah. And you think like, is it because he blew up the Death Star? Is that it? And then you realize, and then it all makes sense. But that's, it's one of those things where sometimes you wish you could go back and watch something for the first time, because it took me a while to like remember that it's not just a given that he's looking for Luke.
Yeah. So what do you feel about the comedy in this movie? That we can talk about it in spoilers. I think this will be the last thing before we wrap it up. Do you think it's too Marvel-y? I had this discussion on Twitter today with this person that's like talking about how Marvel tends to undercut their drama with a quip because it's like they're afraid of being taken too seriously, and that's, some people have said that's the Marvel-esque type humor, and that seems to have seeped into this, and I don't buy that. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
I don't remember that happening, and there was definitely a lot of drama. I mean, that was absolutely not undercut by a quip at all for long stretches. Probably like one line that I remember as just kind of being weird to me was when pilot guy Poe, like he calls it a big ass door. I was like, okay, whatever. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely not something that you would have expected to hear in Star Wars. It's not even a joke. It's just like, I guess we're just updating the language. Okay, fine. Yeah. I can roll with that.
One of the things that I saw people complain about was the fact that Snoke hits her in the head with her lightsaber, as like she tries to force pull it, and he just easily like moves it out of the way and then smacks her on the head with it as it comes back, as if that was a tension killing moment. I don't think that.
No, that wasn't a joke. That was just him being cruel.
Yeah, it was just like, look how easy I control this thing that I can smack you with it. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted like the opening scene where Poe is kind of goofy on the loudspeaker to buy time. I saw some people complaining about that, but I mean, that's like, not only is that not undercutting drama or tension, that's who Poe's character is. The first time we meet Poe, he's being interrogated and he makes a quip about like, so who's going first? Should I start this or should you? Like, that's who he is as a character. So I don't know. I don't know what people want. I don't think like taking this complaint back to its source, which is the Marvel movies do this maybe every once in a while, but like there's a lot of drama in Marvel movies still. Like there's a lot of quips in Guardians of the Galaxy, but there's also beautiful like father-son realization moments that make you weep. And I don't know. Like it's a kid's adventure movie. There's going to be silly, funny stuff in it. And I don't think it should take itself so seriously. So I'm fine if there's quips in the movie. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I agree. None of the humor, in fact, I was completely fine with. And if anything, I agree with the idea that like people need to go back and watch the original movies if they think this wasn't in the same vein, because it very much was.
And also, comedy is often used as a tension release valve. If drama in a scene builds too high and you need to let some of that out, you tell jokes and that releases tension. And oftentimes the jokes are more funny when they've come after a really tense moment, because you are like thankful for the humor to release the tension in you.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't buy it.
No. Yeah. I mean, I guess in some, could have trimmed some fat from this movie. Some parts felt like they contributed nothing or thematically unfocused. And I had some technical nitpicks that could have been, that almost all seem like they're not really problems, but they were just stuff that distracted me, and that'll probably go away with repeat viewings, actually, because I'll just accept that that's how it is.
Yeah. So. And I'm hopeful for the future. I just loved this movie so much. And I think people like, there's this, we hold up Empire Strikes Back as this revered movie in this franchise. I really think if you go back and sit and look at Empire Strikes Back, it is it's the longer of the trilogy. I think it has second act problems as well. The movie kind of slows down to a halt in the second act. And I mean, they're stuck inside a worm for 20 minutes, and that doesn't matter to the plot very much either. So like we tend to revere these movies, and they have problems too. They're not perfect films either. So I mean, Return of the Jedi itself has a lot of weird structural and pacing issues, and a lot of weird editing as well. But
yeah,
it's still good.
I was thinking about Jedi as I was walking out of this movie, and I was like, that movie is two movies. That movie is
right.
the adventures of Luke, Han, and Leia escaping from Jabba's palace, and then
right.
and then the assault on the Death Star, which is the second. It's not even, you can't even say like an act. There's no connection.
Right. There's absolutely no connection. Yeah. And it's
just
not
like, okay, we have Han now. Yeah.
And a lot of movies have that like first action scene to open the movie. Like this one does. Like they have this first action scene, but it usually ties into the plot of the movie overall, and it only lasts for about 10 minutes. The Jabba's palace scene is half an hour of this
at least,
film.
right?
Yeah, I think it is longer. And it has no. It's like, okay, that adventure's done. Okay, now, there's another Death Star, and we're in a second movie. Yeah.
Right. I actually, I mean, what's funny about that is like, I actually love the Jabba's palace stuff.
Yeah, it's great.
And I love all the stuff on the Death Star. It's the stuff on Endor that I don't even hate it. I'm not one of those people. I'm just like, let's move on.
It's tonally dissonant. Like it jumps back and forth between, look at the funny teddy bears, and oh my God, the teddy bears are dying. And it's just it's rough.
Yeah.
But you know what? I still love that movie because I think the throne room scene is so emotionally affecting that I can whistle past the parts of the movie I don't like. And again, as with the Last Jedi, if the movie works on you emotionally, if the movie makes you feel the way the movie makes you want to feel, I think it's a success. And in The Last Jedi, that's what happened to me. So I don't care about all this other stuff. I don't care.
Yeah. I think Last Jedi was probably not the worst film of 2018.
And that in reference of your joke about The Force Awakens says everything.
Yeah, it says everything it needs to say.
Yeah. All right, so that's The Last Jedi. If you guys agree or disagree with our take, let us know. I'm interested to see what people think. I think this is going to be a very divisive film amongst some people, but I'm glad the movie challenged me. And it was fun talking about it, Matt. It was good. Yeah. It was a good talk.
Yeah, I'm glad. I feel much like I better have a better handle on my feelings about it. Now I think I can wade into the criticism and kind of keep my head above the water.
Yeah. So I recommend Film Crit Hulk wrote a piece on his blog that I think you should read, that you will really like. He liked the movie very much, but it's a classic Hulk writing. Yeah.
Okay.
What have you been watching? What have I been watching? Well, I asked you first, so you better tell me.
All right, so let's talk about what we've been watching. And Matt, you watched The Last Jedi.
Watched The Last Jedi, yeah. I have no internet, so it makes it hard to watch things.
Yeah. So I do have one thing to talk about, though. I have a couple. I'll talk about two since you have zero. But I finally watched Kingsman: The Golden Circle. Have you seen that film? I don't think so.
I haven't seen any of the Kingsmans, which is a big hole. Yeah.
Yeah. I loved the first Kingsman. I spoke glowingly about it, that it was James Bond that does not take itself too seriously. And they very much continued that in this movie, but I didn't like it at all. I think it's really it's hard to peg exactly what's wrong with it. It just really didn't capture me. We move into the big thing here is that they're going to America and they're the statesmen, the U.S. version of the Kingsman. And one of the big things that I loved so much about Kingsman was this theme that manners maketh man, and you're not a gentleman because of who you're born. You become an important person. You become this gentleman. You become this Kingsman because of what you earn and your inner strength and who you are as a person. And that like just didn't really exist in this new movie. It's like there was I didn't feel like there was a thematic through line to it. It was just like, everyone loved the scene where there's a bunch of violence and killing, so let's recreate that 4 times throughout the course of this movie and be a little silly. Also, there was a really offensive joke at the end of the last movie. let's do that again in this one. And I don't know. It just felt I was very disappointed. I was bummed.
Okay, yeah.
And I wanted to like it so much.
Was it just a different creative team behind it?
No, that's the thing is like this, like it was Matthew Vaughn again. And this is the first time that Matthew Vaughn has, like, normally he starts a series and then leaves. Like he did it with Kick-Ass. He did it with X-Men. What was the X-Men movie where they rebooted it in the 60s?
Days of Future Past.
No, the one before that.
First Class.
Yeah, there you go. It was First Class. Okay. So the big news was he's, for the first time, is coming back to work on a property that he started. And I was like, oh, so it could be good again. And it just wasn't. The villain wasn't as engaging. I was just really, really disappointed by this movie. So I missed it in theaters, and I'm kind of glad I did.
All right. Well, then in that case, I'll probably watch the first one and maybe pass on the second.
Yeah, absolutely. Watch the first one. It's very good. The other thing I watched was The Crown, season 2 of The Crown, the Netflix original series about the Queen of England. Have you heard of this show at all?
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little tiny bit, yeah.
Yeah, it's on season 2 now. Season 2 just came out a couple weeks ago, I think. Maybe just last week. This is the most expensive television show ever produced.
Wow.
It costs so much money, and it's because they recreate these beautiful, like, elaborate sets, like Buckingham Palace and the Windsor Castle and all these elaborate, and it's a period piece too. So not only do they have to create these elaborate sets, but they have to dress everyone in appropriate dress and dress the streets, and it's so expensive, but it all shows. It is a wonderfully engaging story. Like, if you're a history buff, you kind of get to see the history of the Queen and the Crown from post World War II. That's when it starts, like immediately after World War II, when Elizabeth takes the crown, and then it's slowly going to carry on throughout the history of Elizabeth. I think season 2 ends in the 60s, and I think the actress who's playing Elizabeth is being replaced after this because she's getting too old, and they're going to move the Queen, I think through modern day. I think that's the plan. I think it's a 5 season series plan that's going to move all the way through the Princess Diana stuff and into modern times. So it's one of these shows that I think is just, from the history perspective, is great. From the drama perspective, is great. I think Americans probably like it a little more than British because we're not as aware of some of the history elements of post World War II Britain as the British are. But I think it's worth a watch.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I had a actually pretty wrong impression of what this was. So
I did too.
That's great.
We watched. This is kind of lame, I guess, but we watched the entirety of the first season while we were on our honeymoon in January, because we were like, there was one day where it was really rainy outside and we were exhausted from sightseeing. We were like, well, we're about to go to London, because we were in Norway at the time. We're like, we're about to go to London, so let's bone up on our British history. And we watched the 10-episode Crown in one day. And it was,
that sounds perfect.
It was great. Yeah. So yeah,
awesome.
I think it's worth watching. It's one of those Netflix shows that is good. So
yeah, I'll check that out in my copious free time with my internet that I have.
Yeah, you watch on your phone, Matt.
Yeah,
you got that data plan. That's probably fine.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll be okay.
All right. So that's all we have for you guys this week. If you have any questions or comments, or just want to vehemently disagree with us about our opinions on The Last Jedi, you can feel free to reach out to us via email at dailyplanetfilms@gmail.com or on Twitter @dailyplanetfilms.
Yeah, and if you're not already subscribed to this podcast, we encourage you to do so and ensure that you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
That's right, Matt. Also, our live stream discussion of Tana French's The Secret Place for this month's book club is now available to watch on YouTube right now. So you can go see our stream. Matt, unfortunately, was not able to show his face on that. So it's just a really nice picture of Matt and me laughing at him as he attempts to do Irish accents.
That was fun.
It was a really good conversation. I really enjoyed it. So check that out.
Yeah, we love that book.
Yeah, it was a great book, and it led to great conversations, just like this movie did. Also, please consider going to iTunes and rating and reviewing us. Every review really does help us get more exposure and get out there a little bit more. That's right. And if you like what you hear and want to make sure we keep doing more of it, consider donating $1 a month or whatever else you can afford to our Patreon account, patreon.com/dailyplanetfilms.
Patreon reversed their decision regarding fee changes, so we like them again.
Yay.
So become a patron now. You get access to a whole bunch of cool rewards.
Yeah. Next Monday, Matt, is Christmas, so we're probably not going to have an episode for you guys that week, but we will be back in 2018. This is our last episode of 2017, man. It's so sad.
Oh, wow.
But we will be back on January 2nd with our 2017 movie roundup. We're going to talk about our thoughts on what we thought were the best films of the year, and we're also going to give out the second annual Golden Planet Awards. Maybe we'll have James Gentry back to give out his illustrious best movie to watch hungover on a Saturday morning award.
Can't wait.
Yeah. Everyone out there have a very Merry Christmas, have a happy holidays, and a wonderful New Year's. And we're going to see you all in a couple weeks. And go watch Star Wars.
Podcast is over. It's done. We hope you all had some fun. Go back to your work or your school. Maybe the gym. Hey, that's cool. Regardless, just go away. But please come back next Friday.